once had 2 job interviews in North Carolina. I lived in New York at the time. I was taking the drive down there instead of flying to save money. My at the time job sucked, and the 2 jobs I was interviewing for could finally be a new start for me. They were corporate office jobs with a lot of benefits and good salaries. Plus, the weather would be much better than New York. I was driving down there on a Thursday night. I took off from work Friday because that's when the 2 interviews were. Since I had to work Thursday, I had to hit the road as soon as I was off work. I stopped home first to grab my suitcase and other stuff I was bringing. Then I said goodbye to my family and set off. It was a long 8+ hour drive ahead of me. My ETA was into the early hours of the morning, like 2 a.m. I was heading to a Comfort Inn. I drank like 3 cups of coffee my first few hours driving, and for a while I was good. But if you're already running on fumes, no amount of coffee is going to keep you going. I already didn't get much sleep the night before because I was stressing over these interviews, and after a long, busy day at work, the last thing I wanted to be doing was driving close to 9 hours. It was late at night now. I had about 2 hours left in the drive. There were very few other cars on the road this late at night on a weeknight. I was starting to feel really sleepy now, but I knew most of the drive was behind me. Suddenly, on the side of the highway, I saw a man in a suit standing there, not walking, not moving. He was facing my car, and as I looked at him as I passed, I saw his face turning to follow my car. I said out loud, "What the fuck?" It was truly bizarre. I almost contemplated turning around and asking if he needed a ride. He was just in the middle of the highway in a suit at like 12:30 at night. I came up with stories in my head about what may have happened, like maybe his girlfriend kicked him out of the car. I did this to keep my mind awake as I felt like I was drifting away. Then something beyond frightening happened. It was only maybe 10 minutes after I had seen that man that I saw another man on the side of the road coming up, also in a suit, also just standing there. What the hell was going on? I slowed down to pull to the side of the road and possibly ask if everything was okay, and maybe offer a ride. I don't know what I was thinking, but either way, when I was on the shoulder almost to a stop, I looked in the rearview mirror and then turned around completely, and that man was gone, as if he just disappeared. I stepped on the gas and got back on the road. I was losing it. I needed to stop for another coffee. I had about an hour and a half to go at this point. I stopped at the first pit stop I could find and bought a medium coffee. I drank a few sips, but as I was sitting in the rest area gas station parking lot, I spotted a man in a suit again, standing under a light post. It was the same man. This time I got a clearer view of his face. He looked like a middle-aged white man, short dark brown hair, clean-shaven, and a neutral expression. But it was the way he was once again facing my car that freaked me the fuck out. I turned the car on and got out of there without looking back. I wanted to complete this drive, but the coffee wasn't doing it. I felt like I was going to pass out behind the wheel. I wasn't going to make it, so I pulled off the highway and parked in a random parking lot. I angled the seat all the way down and I attempted to go to sleep. As tired as I was, I couldn't help but be scared in this empty parking lot. Scared that if I opened my eyes, I would see that man in the suit again. I was drifting into a sleep when something made me wake up again and open my eyes. Probably my mind playing tricks on me again. I looked around the outside of my car, scared I was going to see him. I looked out each window and then the front windshield, and it was clear. Then I looked in the rearview mirror, and I felt my soul leave my body for a second, because there I saw for a second a person in the back seat. I'm sure it was the man in the suit again, but I didn't look long enough because I opened the door, screamed, and fell backwards out of the car as I crawled back. I kept screaming until I finally got up, looked inside the car, and saw nobody. The back seat was empty. As I came to my senses, I realized my mind had been playing tricks on me all night. There is no man in a suit. I'm just completely exhausted and need to sleep. I got back in my car, my heart racing. Honestly now though, I was too awake to go to sleep. I turned the car back on and finished my coffee and banged out the rest of the drive. By the time I checked into the hotel and got to the room, I fell into the bed and passed out right away. The next day, my first interview was at 11 a.m., so I didn't get much sleep, but but I definitely felt somewhat recharged. However, the second my interviewer walked out to greet me, I froze up. My interviewer looked identical to the image of that man in the suit I kept hallucinating the night before. I know the interviewer noticed me freeze up. I could see it in his face. I tried to recover from this, but it set the tone for the rest of the interview, and I was completely nervous and out of it. I felt like I were in a dream. I left that interview with only an hour to get ready for my next one, and my next interviewer was a woman. I did much better with this one, because I actually got the job. I still work here and live in North Carolina now. My old therapist told me that she thinks the stress of mentally preparing for the interviews mixed with the lack of sleep caused me to hallucinate the main cause of my fear and stress. And so I hallucinated a man in a suit because that's who I pictured would be interviewing me. I feel like it doesn't sound too far-fetched, but it doesn't change how downright horrific the whole ordeal was. I was driving in Clearfield County, Pennsylvania one night to avoid traffic getting home. It was probably a little past midnight at this point, and the road was basically deserted, just the way I like it. I was listening to my usual podcast on the radio when a ding came from my car, alerting me that I was low on fuel. I put a pit stop into my Maps app for the nearest gas station, which was a little ways up the secluded road. About 5 minutes later, I pulled into the gas station on the right, the only parking lot for miles, as this road was basically nothing but woods on each side. The gas station was some generic, no-name gas station. I pulled next to the pump and noticed a man filling up the tank of his old beater pickup truck. He was looking at me as I walked past him and into the shop. Inside the shop, I bought a coffee and paid cash for my gas. When I came back outside, I noticed the man at the pump getting into his pickup truck, then driving away. After a couple of minutes of filling up the tank, I got back in my car and continued my drive. But not even a minute after leaving the station, I noticed on the side of the road on the grass was that same pickup truck from the gas station. It was just sitting next to the woods, turned off. Interesting. I kept driving, looking in my rearview mirror to see if it would turn on. Nope. I turned my podcast back on and continued my drive. A few minutes passed though, and I heard another ding come from my car. My dashboard screen showed that one of my tires was very low. I slowed down and started hearing a wobbling sound. I opened a window and knew right away I had a flat tire. I pulled to the side of the road and went to investigate. It was my rear driver's side tire. It was flat. I didn't think I hit anything. I would have felt it. The thought came to my head, what if that guy at the gas station slashed it? I took out my phone and was looking up the number for my roadside assistance company on Google. I heard the sound of a car or truck engine a little down the road behind me, but oddly I didn't see any headlights. It was just pitch black down there. Then the sound of the engine suddenly stopped, and it was quiet again. I went to my trunk to grab the SOS flashlight out of my toolbox my dad gave me one year as a Christmas present. I grabbed the long light rod, turned it on, and aimed it down the road. I saw the reflection of a truck's headlights, pulled on the side of the road about 200 feet away. It looked like that pickup truck again. I gasped and ran into the woods and ducked behind a big bush and tree. I took out my phone and called 911. I heard the sound of the truck down the road starting, and this time the headlights were on. I heard and saw through the bush the truck pull up next to my car, and then after a short moment of silence, a man yelled out, "You need some help?" I knew better than to answer. 911 picked up, and I whispered into the phone my location, and that someone slashed my tire, and that I think the person who did it was right here following me. The lady asked a bunch of standard questions, asking me to describe the man and his truck. I heard the truck door open and close. I told the lady over the phone that the man got out of his truck. She told me to remain hidden in the woods if I thought he was a threat. She asked if I could see if he was armed, and that's when the call disconnected. I had shitty cell reception here. I waited, hoping she would call me back. I'm sure she was trying to, but it wouldn't go through. I heard the sound of another passing car on the road. It was slowing down. Then I heard talking. It was the voice of another man. I crept closer to the edge of the woods to get a view of the road. I saw the man from the pickup truck standing next to this other stopped pickup truck in the middle of the road. He was talking to a person in the truck. I overheard the creepy man coming up with this fake explanation as to what was going on here. At that moment, I rushed into the road yelling, "Help, I don't know him." Both the man in the truck and the man who followed me looked over to me. I said to the man in the truck that this man slashed my tire and followed me here. The man in the truck's reaction was to look at the man with a disturbed look. The creepy man denied having done anything to my tires and claimed he's never seen me ever. At the same time, he hurried away to his pickup truck and started backing up until he cleared both of our vehicles, then drove off. The man in the other pickup truck got out and examined my flat, then offered me a ride into town. I told him I had police officers on the way, and sure enough, within a few minutes, a cop car with its lights on pulled up beside us. The man vouched for me when I told him about the other man. The police officer said he'd go down to the gas station and request to see the camera footage to see if it caught the pickup driver actually slashing my tire. The officer took my info, and he waited with me while I waited for the roadside assistance company. The tow truck driver gave me a ride to a shop where my dad picked me up. I never heard from that police officer, so I guess he didn't see anything in that video footage. It's scary how close I was to probably being abducted, though. It was the most horrific, haunting night of my life. It still sends shivers down my spine. I'm 28 years old, and my boyfriend Todd lives in a different state from me. We take turns visiting each other for the most part, but I'll usually end up visiting him more often because he has his own place, and I still live with my sister as a roommate. I was going up there for a week because it was winter break, and I had off because I'm a teacher, so I packed a lot. I was taking up there my crappy '09 Hyundai Sonata that I bought for my sister. Up where Todd lives, there was snow on the ground at this point, so the more north I got, the more careful I had to be driving, as that car was not really built for driving in the snow. It was on the later side, and unfortunately, it was starting to snow really hard now. There were blizzard warnings earlier, but both Todd and I agreed it would be better to try and beat the blizzard tonight rather than come tomorrow when the roads are full of snow. I started to accept the fact that I'd need to stay somewhere for the night, as I was still too far away, and the roads were getting bad. After stopping for a quick sandwich and some coffee at a small diner, the waitress who I was conversing with told me there's no way I should be on the roads right now. She recommended a few hotels and motels in the area. Then, after she walked away and I was left alone to finish up eating, a guy sitting at the bar spun in his chair and said to me there's a motel right up the road from here. When I put the motel's name into my phone, it said it was literally 5 minutes away. He said it was nice and cheap too, so I could just get a quick night's rest and get back on the road tomorrow. He really seemed to overhear my whole conversation with the waitress. He was also just sitting there at the bar with a beer. I'd never seen a person go to a diner just to drink. I didn't even know diners really served alcohol. But people up by Todd are a little weird. To me at least, because I grew up in the city. The man introduced himself as Toby, and I gave him a fake name saying I was Michelle. The rest of my time there, Toby was half facing me in his spinning bar stool, and I wasn't really looking to keep talking to him. So I looked away out the window to the snow until the waitress gave me my check. Then I said goodbye to them both as I left. In that half hour I spent in the diner, the snow accumulated at least an inch. I needed to get to that motel ASAP. I drove slow and was at the motel in a few minutes, maybe 10. There were a couple cars in the lot. It looked like a cheap motel, which was all I needed. I didn't want to waste money anyway. I went to the front desk and asked for a room for a night. I think I paid around $50, and the man at the desk handed me a key to one of the downstairs rooms. I walked back outside to my car to get my stuff and bring it inside. It was a tiny little room with tacky wallpaper, a queen-sized bed, and a red carpet. It was fine for the night. I tried to FaceTime Todd, but there was no reception at all here. The motel had Wi-Fi, but the password was probably at the front desk. So I put my shoes back on and hurried outside through the cold snow to the front desk. On my way there, I noticed there was a new car in the parking lot. I saw someone sitting inside of it, but I didn't take the time to look at who it could have been because realistically, who does that? The man at the front desk emotionlessly pointed to the free Wi-Fi sign with the password, and I typed it in. It took a minute, but I was connected. I went back to my room in a hurry, locked the door, and FaceTimed Todd. Even with Wi-Fi, the connection was so shitty. I could see his face, but it would freeze frame for like 5 seconds, and his voice would cut as well. I was able to at least communicate with him that I was safe in the motel. We decided to just text instead because the FaceTime wasn't really working. We were texting back and forth for a few minutes. Then I heard something come from the bathroom. I leaned forward and saw that the bathroom door was shut. Was it shut before? I didn't remember. I texted Todd that I heard something in the bathroom, and I started freaking out because I realized I ran to the front desk without locking the motel room door. He asked if the door locks by itself. I said I don't think so, but now I also don't remember if I left the door cracked open or not. He told me to get up and check the door to see if it locks by itself when it closes, and to bring the key with me. I got up, put my shoes on, and saw that the door had a traditional twisting lock that moved with the knob from the inside or the key on the outside. I opened the door, looking to confirm this, but I noticed instantly the extra set of footprints leading to my door. These footprints led from that car that I saw someone sitting in to my door, and nobody was in that car anymore. I felt like screaming, but instead I closed the door to my room and ran to the front desk. I cried to the man that there's an intruder in my room. The front desk worker was not some huge jacked dude, so I don't think he was wanting to go confronting someone. He told me to wait in here, and he called someone. I thought he was calling the police, but instead he started speaking in some other language. I think he was calling a friend or associate. He hung up and told me again to just sit tight in here with him. I was standing in a position where I could see out the glass down to my room, and I let out a shriek when I saw the door to my room open and that man Toby from the diner walking to his car. We locked eyes for a second before he got in his car and backed out onto the unplowed roads, disappearing slowly down the road. The front desk worker's associate or friend or whoever it was arrived a while later. He was this big guy who didn't speak English. I don't know what they were saying to each other, but the front desk worker told me he would give me a different room free of charge to make me feel better. I didn't feel better, but I didn't have any other options of places to stay at this point. I took the new key, and the two men helped me move my stuff into the new room. Todd offered to come here, but I told him not to. It would be too long and too dangerous to drive in the dark and the snow. The next morning, the streets were somewhat plowed, enough to get through the rest of the drive to Todd's. Looking back, I don't like how that motel worker probably didn't call the cops because he didn't want his motel to get any negative attention. I called that diner to warn them about that man. I have no trust in strangers anymore. Not after this.